My mother didn't come to my wedding. She chose a Hawaii vacation with my brother instead. Everyone told me to let it go, to be the bigger person, to understand that family is complicated. I smiled through the pain, nodded politely, and said nothing. But what they didn't know was that I was watching, learning, and waiting. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't served hot, it's served cold, calculated, and when they least expect it. Welcome to the mental grand, where justice finds those who wait for it. The day before my wedding, I stood in the kitchen of my childhood home, holding my phone with trembling hands. My mother's voice came through the speaker with that casual tone she used when she'd already made up her mind about something and didn't want to argue about it. "Sweetheart, I know this isn't ideal, but your brother really needs this trip. He's been so stressed with his new business venture, and he specifically asked me to come with him to Hawaii. It's only for 10 days. We'll celebrate when I get back, I promise." I felt my fiancée Sarah's hand on my shoulder, her silent support the only thing keeping me upright. "Mom, it's my wedding. You're supposed to walk me down the aisle. Dad's gone. You're all I have." There was a pause, and I could hear my brother Marcus laughing in the background, probably already packing his designer luggage. "Daniel, don't be dramatic. You'll have Sarah's whole family there. Marcus needs me right now. You've always been the independent one. You understand, don't you?" I understood perfectly. I understood that I'd always been second place in my mother's eyes. I understood that Marcus, 3 years younger and perpetually failing upward with Mom's money, would always be her priority. I understood that my accomplishments, my law degree, my successful career as a corporate attorney, my stability, none of it mattered as much as whatever whim Marcus was chasing that week. "Sure, Mom, I understand." I hung up before she could hear my voice crack. Sarah wrapped her arms around me, and I let myself feel the hurt for exactly 5 minutes. Then I dried my eyes, straightened my spine, and started planning the most beautiful wedding my mother would only see in photographs. The wedding was perfect. Sarah's parents stepped in immediately, her father walking both of us down the aisle in a moment that still makes me tear up when I think about it. 200 guests filled the historic mansion we'd rented. The spring flowers were in bloom, and when we said our vows, I meant every single word. But there was an empty seat in the front row, and everyone knew who should have been sitting there. My mother's sister, Aunt Rachel, squeezed my hand during the reception. "Your mother is making a mistake she'll regret for the rest of her life," she whispered. I smiled and thanked her, but inside, something had shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was done. That's when I started paying attention to things I'd ignored for years. How much money was my mother actually giving Marcus? Where was it going? What were these business ventures he kept starting and abandoning? I was a lawyer specializing in corporate litigation and asset protection. I knew how to read financial documents, how to spot fraud, how to trace money. So I started looking, quietly, methodically, without telling anyone what I was doing. What I found in the first month alone made my blood run cold. Marcus wasn't just irresponsible with money, he was actively destroying my mother's financial security. In the 3 years since our father died, she'd given him over $200,000 for various failed businesses. A food truck that never got off the ground, a cryptocurrency investment scheme that collapsed, a boutique fitness studio that closed after 6 months. Each time, Marcus had convinced her that this was the one, the big break he needed. And each time, the money vanished like smoke. But it got worse, much worse. I discovered that 6 months ago, Marcus had convinced my mother to take out a second mortgage on the house we grew up in, the house my father had worked 30 years to pay off. He needed capital for a sure-thing real estate flip. The flip never happened. The money was gone. And now, my mother was sitting on a mortgage payment she could barely afford on her retirement income. I sat in my home office, documents spread across my desk, and felt something I'd never felt toward my brother before. Not anger, not even rage. Something colder and more focused. This wasn't just about a missed wedding anymore. This was about a pattern of manipulation and exploitation that had been going on under my nose while I'd been busy building my own life and trying to be the son who didn't need anything from anyone. Well, that ended now. Because what Marcus and my mother didn't know was that Dad made me the executor of his estate. Not her, not Marcus, me. And he'd done it for a reason. Sarah found me at 2 in the morning, still reading through financial statements. Daniel, you need to sleep. I looked up at my wife, this incredible woman who'd married me despite my broken family, and made a decision. My father saw this coming. He knew Marcus would bleed Mom dry if given the chance. That's why he set things up the way he did. I need to make some calls. Over the next 2 weeks, I did what I do best. I built a case. I documented every transaction, every failed business, every promise Marcus had made and broken. I reviewed the terms of my father's will with a microscope, and I discovered something that changed everything. When my father died, he'd left the house to my mother with a very specific provision. If she ever took out a loan against the property, or if the property was ever in danger of foreclosure, ownership would immediately transfer to me, and I would have full discretion over its management. It was his way of protecting her from making catastrophic financial decisions in her grief. The provision had been triggered the moment she signed the second mortgage papers. Legally, quietly, without anyone knowing, I'd become the owner of my childhood home 6 months ago. The lawyers handling Dad's estate had sent me the notification, but I'd been so busy with wedding planning that I'd filed it away without fully processing what it meant. Now I understood. Dad had given me the tools to save Mom from herself, and from Marcus. But here's what I realized as I sat with this information. If I swooped in immediately, Marcus would just find another angle, another way to manipulate Mom for money. No, I needed to let this play out a little further. I needed to let Marcus hang himself with his own rope. So I waited, I watched, and I prepared. 3 months after my wedding, during which my mother had called exactly twice, both times to ask if I'd heard from Marcus, who apparently wasn't returning her calls, the situation came to a head. Mom called me on a Tuesday evening, and for the first time since Dad's funeral, I heard real fear in her voice. Daniel, I need your help. The bank sent me a letter. They're saying I'm 3 months behind on the mortgage payments, and they're starting foreclosure proceedings. But I've been sending Marcus the money every month to make the payments. He said he'd handle it because I get confused with the online banking. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. How much have you sent him, Mom? $4,000 a month for the last 6 months. The payment is $3,500. He said the extra was for escrow or something. I don't understand how this happened. I understood exactly how it happened. Marcus had been pocketing the money, probably funding whatever lifestyle he was living now that his business ventures had dried up. Mom, I need you to come to my office tomorrow. Bring all your financial documents. Everything. Can you do that? When my mother walked into my downtown office the next morning, she looked smaller than I remembered. Older. Tired. The guilt of that almost made me reconsider what I was about to do. Almost. Sarah had asked me the night before if I was sure about this approach. She chose you over your wedding. Why are you helping her? I thought about that question for a long time before answering. Because Dad asked me to, and because she's still my mother even when she's wrong. But I'm not doing this her way anymore. I'm doing it mine. Now, as Mom sat across from my desk, looking at me with those same eyes that used to comfort me when I had nightmares as a kid, I had to harden my heart to what came next. Mom, we need to talk about Marcus, and we need to talk about the house. For the next hour, I walked her through everything I'd discovered, every failed business, every lie, every dollar that had disappeared. She cried, she defended him, she made excuses. He's just had some bad luck. He's trying. He's my baby, Daniel. And there it was, the truth she'd never quite said out loud. He was her baby, and I was just Daniel. Always capable, always fine, always able to handle things on my own. I let her finish, let her get it all out, and then I dropped the bomb. Mom, you don't own the house anymore. I do, and I have for 6 months. Dad's will had a provision that triggered when you took out the second mortgage. What are you talking about? That's my house. Your father left it to me. I slid the legal documents across the desk. He left it to you with conditions designed to protect you. He knew this might happen. He knew Marcus had problems, and he trusted me to handle it when it did. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to pay off both mortgages, I'm going to settle your debts, and you're going to live in that house for the rest of your life, rent-free, with all expenses covered. But there are new rules. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me, and maybe she never really seen me clearly before. What rules? Rule 1. Marcus doesn't get another dollar, not from you, not from me, not from anyone in this family. Rule 2. You're going to sit down with a financial advisor I trust, and you're going to learn to manage your money properly. Rule 3. You're going to attend family therapy with me and Sarah. And Rule 4. You're going to admit that you made a mistake. Not just about the money, about the wedding. The silence in my office was deafening. I could see the war happening behind her eyes. Pride versus pragmatism. Her love for Marcus versus the undeniable reality that he'd betrayed her. Finally, she spoke. And if I don't agree to these rules? I'd prepared for this question. I'd hoped I wouldn't have to answer it, but I had. Then I'll still pay off the mortgages because that's what Dad wanted, but you'll pay me rent at market rate and you'll figure out the rest on your own. No more safety net, no more son cleaning up messes. You'll have a landlord instead of a family. It was harsh. It was probably the hardest thing I'd ever said to my mother, but it was also the boundary I should have set years ago. Because here's what I'd learned in my career as a lawyer. People don't change because you beg them to. They don't change because you love them. They change when the consequences of not changing become unbearable. And it was time for consequences. My mother stared at those documents for what felt like an eternity. Then she did something I didn't expect. She laughed. Not a happy laugh, but the kind of laugh that comes when you finally see the absurdity of your own choices. Your father would be proud of you right now, and probably furious with me. She looked up, tears streaming down her face. I missed your wedding for a vacation with a son who's been stealing from me? What kind of mother does that? I wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay, to fall back into the pattern of making things easier for everyone else. But that's not what she needed. That's not what any of us needed. The kind who's going to make different choices now. She agreed to everything, all 4 rules. That night, Sarah and I sat on our back porch, and I told her everything that had happened. How do you feel? She asked. Honestly, I feel like I just saved my mother from drowning even though she jumped in the water voluntarily. Sarah laughed at that, then got serious. And Marcus? What happens when he finds out? That was the question, wasn't it? Because Marcus still didn't know the house was gone, still didn't know the money train had been permanently derailed, still didn't know that his older brother, the one he'd always seen as boring and overly serious, had just dismantled his entire grift. I didn't have to wait long to find out. 3 days later, Marcus showed up at my house unannounced. I was in my garage working on restoring a vintage motorcycle I'd bought as a wedding gift to myself when I heard his voice. "Danny boy, long time no see." I turned around slowly, wrench still in my hand, and took in the sight of my baby brother. Expensive sneakers, designer jacket, new watch that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, all funded by our mother's retirement and the equity in her house. "Marcus, what brings you here?" He strolled into my garage like he owned the place, that same charming smile he'd been using to manipulate people since he was 5 years old. Can a guy visit his big brother? Besides, I heard Mom's been talking to you about some financial stuff. Thought I'd clear the air about some misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. That was rich. Oh, what misunderstandings would those be? He leaned against my workbench, casual as you please. Look, I know she's probably making it sound worse than it is. The mortgage thing? Total mix-up with the bank. I've got it handled. But she is all worried now, and you know how she gets. I just need you to calm her down. Tell her everything's fine. I set down my wrench and gave Marcus my full attention. Everything is not fine, Marcus. You've stolen over $24,000 from our mother in the last 6 months alone. You've put her house in foreclosure, and you've been lying about it the entire time. His smile faltered for just a second before snapping back into place. Stolen? That's a strong word. She gave me that money for investments. Investments that don't exist, businesses that never opened, promises you never kept. I've seen the bank statements, Marcus. I've tracked every dollar. And here's the part you really need to hear. It's over. Now the smile disappeared completely. What do you mean it's over? I pulled out my phone and showed him the deed to the house, now in my name. I mean, Mom doesn't own the house anymore. I do, and you don't get to take advantage of her ever again. I've seen a lot of reactions in my career, shock, anger, denial, but watching Marcus process this information was something else entirely. He went through all 5 stages of grief in about 30 seconds, landing finally on rage. You can't do this. She's our mother. That's her house. It was her house. Dad made sure I could step in if something like this happened. And it did. Now it's my house. She lives there for free, and you're done bleeding her dry. Marcus got right in my face, and for a moment, I thought he might actually take a swing at me. You self-righteous prick. You've always been jealous that Mom loves me more. You couldn't stand that she chose me over your stupid wedding, so now you're punishing both of us. And there it was. The truth he'd been carrying around, the belief that had justified every terrible decision he'd made. I could have gotten angry. I could have listed all the ways he was wrong. Instead, I just felt tired. You're right, Marcus. She does love you. Probably more than she loves me. And that's why she kept giving you money even when it hurt her. That's why she missed the most important day of my life. But you know what? That doesn't give you the right to destroy her future. I stepped back and crossed my arms. You want to be mad at me? Fine, be mad. But the money stops today. The manipulation stops today. If you want a relationship with Mom, you're going to have to build it on something other than her checkbook. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not even hurt. It was the realization that for the first time in his life, his charm wasn't going to work. His manipulation wasn't going to work. He'd finally met a wall he couldn't climb over or slip around. She'll never forgive you for this, he said quietly. Maybe not, I agreed, but she'll have a roof over her head and food on her table. That's worth more than her forgiveness. Marcus left without another word. I went back to working on my motorcycle, but my hands were shaking. Sarah came out a few minutes later with 2 beers. I was watching from the window. You okay? I took the beer and drank half of it in one go. I just went to war with my brother over my mother's right to financial security. How okay can I be? She sat down next to me on the garage floor. You did the right thing. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But doing the right thing doesn't always feel right. Sometimes it feels like you just burned down your family to save it. Over the next few weeks, the fallout was exactly what I had expected. Marcus stopped speaking to me completely. Mom was attending therapy like she had promised. But our sessions were awkward and painful, filled with long silences and carefully worded statements that didn't really address the massive elephant in the room. But something interesting started happening. With Marcus out of the picture financially, Mom started seeing things more clearly. In our 3rd therapy session, she finally said what needed to be said. I was wrong about the wedding. I was wrong about a lot of things. I thought I was helping Marcus, but I was enabling him. And I thought you didn't need me because you were always so capable. But needing someone and deserving their presence are 2 different things. You deserve to have me at your wedding. I'm sorry. I won't lie. I cried. Right there in the therapist's office, this grown man, successful lawyer, completely broke down. Because that's what I needed to hear for months. Not excuses, not explanations, just acknowledgement and apology. Thank you, Mom. The financial advisor I'd set her up with reported that she was doing great. Learning to budget, understanding her retirement accounts, even starting to ask smart questions about investment strategies. Without the drain of Marcus's schemes, her money was actually growing. The house was safe, she was safe, and slowly, painfully, we were rebuilding trust. But the story doesn't end there, because 6 months after that conversation in the garage, Marcus showed up at the house. Mom called me immediately, panic in her voice. "He's here. He's at the door. He says he needs to talk to me. What do I do?" I was at the office, 20 minutes away in traffic. "Don't let him in. I'm coming over now." By the time I got there, Marcus was sitting on the front porch steps, and he looked rough, really rough. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by regular jeans and a t-shirt. He'd lost weight, and when he looked up at me, there was something different in his eyes. "I'm not here for money," he said before I could say anything. "I know you won't believe me, but I'm not. I just wanted to see her." I sat down on the steps next to him, keeping a safe distance. "What happened to you, Marcus?" He laughed bitterly. "Reality happened. Turns out when the money goes out, so do all your friends. I've been working at a warehouse for the last 3 months, living in a studio apartment with 2 roommates, eating ramen and trying to figure out how I screwed up my life so completely. I wanted to feel satisfaction. I wanted to feel vindicated. Instead, I just felt sad. Why are you really here?" He was quiet for a long time. "I wanted to apologize. To her, to you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I forgive myself. But I needed to say it. I stole from her. I manipulated her. And I ruined your wedding because I was selfish and couldn't stand not being the center of attention for one day." This was the moment I'd been waiting for. The moment when Marcus finally took responsibility. But now that it was here, I didn't know what to do with it. "Does she know you're out here?" He shook his head. I was too scared to knock. I stood up and looked at my brother, this person I'd known my entire life but maybe never really understood. "Come inside. Talk to her. But Marcus, if you hurt her again, if you ask for money, if you manipulate her in any way, I will make sure you regret it. Legally, financially, every way I can. Do you understand?" He nodded. "I understand. And Daniel, thank you for saving her, for being the son I should have been." I let them talk alone. I don't know what was said. Mom never told me, and I never asked, but something shifted that day. Marcus started showing up for Sunday dinners. At first, it was awkward. Then it became normal. He got promoted at the warehouse, started taking night classes at community college, stopped asking for anything and started offering help instead. Was he magically transformed into a perfect person? No, but he was trying, really trying, and that had to count for something. 8 months after my wedding, Sarah and I hosted Thanksgiving at our house. The whole family came. Mom, Marcus, Aunt Rachel, Sarah's parents, even some cousins we hadn't seen in years. And as I looked around the table at these people, this complicated, messy, sometimes painful family, I realized something important. Revenge wasn't what I'd gotten. Justice was. There's a difference. Revenge is about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. Justice is about restoring balance, protecting the vulnerable, and setting boundaries that prevent future harm. I hadn't set out to destroy Marcus. I'd set out to save my mother. And in doing so, maybe I'd saved him too. After dinner, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "Your father would be so proud of you. The way you handled everything, the strength you showed, the boundaries you set. That's the man I raised, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see it." I hugged her, really hugged her, for the first time in what felt like years. "Thanks, Mom." That night, as Sarah and I cleaned up after everyone left, she asked me the question I'd been asking myself. "Do you forgive them? Really?" I thought about it as I dried dishes. I'm working on it. Forgiveness isn't a switch you flip. It's a choice you make every day. Some days are easier than others. But yeah, I think I'm getting there. She kissed my cheek. "You're a better person than most people would be in your situation." I didn't know about that. I just knew that holding on to anger was exhausting, that cutting people off completely was sometimes necessary but always painful, that family was complicated and messy and sometimes required you to be harder than you wanted to be to protect what mattered. A year after my wedding, Sarah and I renewed our vows. It was small, just immediate family and close friends, but this time my mother was there. She walked me down the aisle like she should have done the first time. She cried through the whole ceremony, and afterwards she handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for exactly $50,000. "What's this?" She smiled through her tears. "It's half of what I should have spent on your wedding. The other half is going into a college fund for your future children. I can't give you back the moment I missed, but I can try to make up for it moving forward, if you'll let me." I thought about refusing, about telling her I didn't need her money, that it wasn't about money, that she couldn't buy her way back into my good graces. But then I realized that wasn't what this was. This was her way of saying she valued me, that my important moments mattered to her, that she was trying. So I took the check, hugged my mother, and whispered in her ear, "Thank you for being here this time. That's worth more than any amount of money." Marcus was there too. He'd brought a gift, something he'd made himself in the woodworking class he was taking. A picture frame with a photo of Dad, Mom, him, and me from when we were kids. On the back, he'd carved something. Family isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, trying again, and never giving up on each other. Thanks for not giving up on me. Your brother, Marcus. I'm not going to lie and say everything was perfect after that. We still had hard days. Marcus still struggled sometimes. Mom still made choices I didn't agree with. But we were all trying. We were all showing up. And we were all learning that love without boundaries isn't really love at all. It's enabling. It's codependency. It's a recipe for resentment and pain. If you're still watching this, if you've made it this far in my story, I want you to know something. The mental grand isn't just a channel. It's a reminder that you don't have to let people walk all over you to prove you love them, that setting boundaries isn't cruel, that protecting yourself and others from harm is sometimes the most loving thing you can do. My mother chose my brother over my wedding. That hurt me in ways I'm still processing, but I chose to respond with wisdom instead of bitterness, with boundaries instead of revenge, with justice instead of punishment. And in doing that, I didn't just save my mother's financial future, I saved our relationship. I saved my brother from a path that would have destroyed him, and I saved myself from becoming someone I wouldn't recognize in the mirror. 3 years have passed since that first missed wedding. Sarah and I have a daughter now. Her name is Emma, after my father's mother. Marcus is her favorite uncle. He shows up for every birthday, every milestone, with handmade gifts and genuine love. Mom is an incredible grandmother. She's learned her lesson about favoritism, about boundaries, about the difference between supporting someone and enabling them. She splits her time equally between us now. No more golden child, no more ignored son. Just 2 men she raised, both doing their best. And me? I'm still a lawyer, still fighting for justice in my professional life, still setting boundaries when needed, still choosing wisdom over rage. Because that's what my father taught me. That's what this whole experience taught me. Revenge is easy. Justice is hard. But justice is what lasts. Justice is what heals. Justice is what allows families to rebuild after betrayal. So if you're going through something similar, if you've been overlooked, betrayed, taken advantage of by the people who should love you most, I want you to hear this. You don't have to accept it. You don't have to keep being the strong one, the understanding one, the only one who always forgives and never demands change. Set your boundaries. Protect yourself and others from harm. Fight for justice, not revenge. Because revenge might feel good for a moment, but justice changes everything forever. Thank you for staying with me through this whole story. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding that sometimes the hardest battles we fight are with the people we love most. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Leave a comment telling me your story. Subscribe to The Mental Grand for more stories about real people facing real betrayals and finding their way to real justice. Because these stories matter. Your story matters, and none of us should have to face these battles alone. Welcome to The Mental Grand, where every story ends with dignity, respect, and justice served cold.